Thank you, Evelyn. So now we all freshened up from our break. As Evelyn said, are going to talk about our first year physiotherapy students physical active enough. And now think to yourself, you don't have to answer it for me, are you yourself physical active enough? So everybody made up an answer. We are coming back to it afterwards. So physical inactivity is the fourth leading risk factor for global mortality. And it can lead to risks like cardiovascular diseases or other chronic diseases. But it's not one that cannot be changed, because physical activity can change these risk factors and can even lead to health benefits. Sedentary time, something you're all doing now for the moment because you're sitting listening to me, is actually quite bad for you. As long as you don't do it too much, it's okay. But if you have too much sedentary time, it's not good for you. But how much sedentary time, we don't know, because there's no guidelines yet on it. And then PA levels decrease more and more from childhood to adolescence, and even more from adolescence to adulthood. In the same period, most people start studying at university or university college like this, in this transition from adolescence to adulthood. And those the physical activity and sedentary time, the behaviors change already from adolescence to adulthood, but change even more because most of us go to university during that time. And this time comes with quite unhealthy behaviors, as like most of the students in this room know that you are sitting in this lecture hall quite often. So a lot of sedentary time, less time for physical activity. And as well as, because I searched for physical activity in first year physiotherapy students. As a physiotherapist, you are expected to know what health is and know what physical activity is. But are first year physiotherapy students aware of that themselves as well? It's something that I didn't test if they know what's the definition, but I tested if they can estimate their own physical activity themselves. Which lead to my research question, which is kind of two questions. To what extent do first year physiotherapy students meet the criteria on physical activity? And to what extent are the results found with an accelerometer similar to the student's self-reported level of physical activity and sedentary time? And to make the first question a little bit more understandable, 150 minutes of moderate activity, such as cycling, swimming, you can imagine what it is recommended per week. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but it is for some people though. It was measured by the self-reported physical activity and sedentary time was measured by the IPAC, which is the International Physical Activity Questionnaire. You see 3 questions of it here. So it measures in different areas, such as leisure time and sports, but also in work and transportation, and it also asks how much sedentary time you have in a week. We have in this study included 32 students, all between 18 and 25, and all first year physiotherapy students, of whom I see a few in the room. And the not self-reported, but the more objective measurement of physical activity and sedentary time was with use of a Activ8 Accelerometer, which I have here in my hand, which is really small, so the people in the back might see it almost, maybe not. This is an accelerometer. For the people who don't know who it is, think about those, I used to have them as a kid, like those step counters, which you collect on your jeans, and they count your steps during the day. This is the same, but way more complex. And that's why it can also measure when you sleep, but my participants didn't have to wear it while they were sleeping. Just when they're lying on the couch, it measures. When you sit, when you walk, when you cycle, when you run, and when you stand, that is what it can measure. And that was divided into sedentary time, low activity level, moderate activity level, and high activity level. And the same is done with the IPAC results. But the IPAC already asks in low activity, moderate. But here I had to change a little bit with the compendium, who for some people is known about the METs. So I had to count the METs for certain activities. What I found with in the 32 participants, that within the IPAC results, there is a wide range between physical activity and sedentary time between participants. So I put in this table only the moderate activity and the sedentary time. As you can see, in the moderate activity, for example, people said that they spent 599.9 minutes per week on moderate activity, but the one person who was the lowest only reported 9.8 minutes, and the one person who we can say overestimated themselves, because I checked it, they were at 2300.2. So there is a big difference between participants, but also a very big difference between the IPAC and the accelerometer measurement. As you can see, the accelerometer had a median of 181 minutes per week. What you can see as well, that the accelerometer measured the 181.3, which is above 150 minutes. So 68.8% of the participants fit in the standards of the World Health Organization recommendations, but 31.3%, which is almost 10 people, didn't fit within those recommendations. So there was 10 people out of my 32 participants who were not physical active enough. And then, let me check. Now I'm doing it again. Then we see that in the results, only using the reported IPAC results to determine whether or not somebody is physical active or not would lead to faulty conclusions. As you see, most people overestimate themselves. What I saw in the results is that for moderate and vigorous activity, students overestimated themselves with physical activity, and for low activity and sedentary time, students underestimated it. So they thought they did a lot more of physical activity and a lot less of sedentary time. So it's pretty risky to use only the IPAC for estimating somebody's physical activity and sedentary time. The accelerometer is more objective, but has its limitations as well, because, for example, if I reported in the IPAC that I was doing weightlifting just for my biceps or something, it's something that the accelerometer cannot measure. So I can report it as vigorous activity in the IPAC, but it looks, when I've done the accelerometer measurement, it looks like I overestimated myself, but actually the accelerometer underestimated my physical activity. That's weird. Then we just go from there. Now we're back. Most important of this research, it was not a very big research, not a research that will be bigly published because it had so many participants. So as a follow-up, most important would be more participants, maybe a follow-up from the first year to the fourth year, how the sedentary time and physical activity changes throughout the years, because now we only checked the transition from high school to first year physiotherapy. And also we had physiotherapists who didn't have that much knowledge yet because we tested them in the beginning of the year, so they were just in school for I think 10 weeks or something, so their knowledge was not that big yet. So thus physical activity and sedentary time and their knowledge about it, their estimation change during the year because they get more aware of physical activity and sedentary time. And then it could be as well recommended, because we are now on this lowest level of knowledge. That was what I wanted to create with this study. We have created some knowledge now. We should make it way bigger. But from knowledge, like as you can see, the 5 stages, we are just on the bottom. And with further study, we could come to further research, recommendations, and go further in those steps. And maybe even as recommendation, it could be for a university, for example, that they create standing classrooms or something like this, or that students as well are more aware of their physical activity, so they can change it, of course, themselves, but maybe a university can also do something in those changes. The conclusion of this study, the results of this research, show that 68.8% of the participants meet the standards of physical activity, measured with an accelerometer, so I excluded the IPAC in this result or in this conclusion. Also, that big differences are seen between participants and between the results of the IPAC and the accelerometer. And that comes with the overestimation of moderate and vigorous activity and an underestimation of low activity and sedentary time within the IPAC. And are there any questions?